And not a single person talks about a secret part of Kevin Costner's Yellowstone deal. It gave him power that the company didn't want him to have. They tried to break him for years. The scripts were late. They changed when they were going to shoot. They even said they would kill off his character in the most embarrassing way possible. But Costner was safe in a way they didn't know about. The whole show fell apart when he finally used it. In that last Instagram video, he said things that were just the start. His real reason for not coming back has to do with secrets that could ruin lives. His birthday is January 18th, 1955, and he was born in Linwood, California. The rise of his father Bill from digging holes to running Southern California's utilities company. Edison told the old story of how to get ahead by working hard. Sharon Ray's job let her see firsthand how hard things can be for families, and Kevin picked up on that understanding. Kevin's family moved a lot as he grew up because his dad worked his way up at the light company. Kevin said he felt like an army kid who was always the new kid at school because he had to move for every raise. The family first lived in Linwood and then in Compton. He went to middle school in Orange County, then Ventura, Visalia, and finally back to Orange County. He went to Visalia's Mount Whitney High School and played in the marching band. He felt nervous and unsure of himself all the time. He said he lost a lot of confidence because he had to start over and meet new people every time. But it taught him how to observe things very well. He had a strong sense of empathy and other traits that shaped his acting. Kevin had a surprising artistic side, even though he had trouble in school and was called a bad student a lot of the time. He was very good at sports like basketball, football, and baseball, even though he was only 5 feet 2 inches tall when he finished from high school at age 18. He sang in a band, learned to play the piano, and wrote words. This is the First Baptist Church. Most of the people around him didn't know that these hobbies gave him a way to be artistic. In the same year, he made his own boat and paddled down rivers that Lewis and Clark had used to get to the Pacific. He loved American history and the spirit of the frontier, and this brave journey showed it. Seeing how the West was won in 1962 only made me more passionate about this. Still, he kept a lot of his creative ideas to himself because as a young man growing up in California in the 1970s, he felt like he had to live up to everyone's standards. Kevin dropped out of Villa Park High School in Villa Park, California in 1973. He played baseball with his friend Dennis Burt there. Soon after, he started going to California State University Fullerton and got his Bachelor of Arts in Business there in 1978. He joined the Delta Chi fraternity and took a steady, sensible road that looked like it would lead to a stable job. Because they had been through hard times, his parents put job security above all else. Kevin remembered very well what his dad told him. Nobody will ever be able to do more work than you, so don't let anyone else. Kevin agreed with this hard-boiled advice at the time because he thought he was going to work in a business. He married his college love, Cindy Silva, that same year. They started what seemed like a normal middle-class life together. A secret Kevin kept to himself during his last year at Cal State Fullerton was that he was taking acting classes. 5 nights a week, not just once. He told no one, not even Cindy, about it. He even tried out for a show off campus called Rumpelstiltskin. He was hooked, even though he didn't get the part. This secret life showed how serious he was about acting, even though he seemed to be getting ready for a business job. Kevin and Cindy got married in 1978 and went to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico for their vacation. They didn't have much money, and when they got back, they had to take a $8 bus from LAX to Anaheim with their whole stuff in one bag. Cindy worked in marketing for Delta Airlines to help support the young couple, and Kevin secretly wished he could be in Hollywood movies. They were married for 16 years before getting a divorce in 1994. The deal they agreed to was one of the biggest in Hollywood history at $80 million. I thought the most interesting part of that wedding trip was the flight home. Kevin saw the famous actor Richard Burton sitting not far away. Burton bought all the seats around him to be alone, but Kevin, who was 23 at the time, worked up the nerve to talk to Burton. He softly said, "I wanted to be an actor." "Well, you're a famous actor, but you've been through a lot of marriages and drama," she said. I just want to know if actors have that kind of life. I'd like my life to be calm and easy." Burton told him, "You have green eyes. My eyes are green. I believe you will be okay." The talk lasted 20 minutes and gave Kevin a strong but quiet sense of hope. When the plane finally touched down, Kevin and Cindy sat on their one bag to wait for their bus on the curb. From nowhere, Burton's car pulled up in front of them. The window with the screen came down. Burton leaned out and said, "Good luck to you." The car then drove off. Kevin would never see him again, but that moment would always be a part of his mind. Kevin worked as a marketing executive for a short time after finishing in 1978, but only for 1 month. His job stopped him from going to acting classes and auditions, and he quickly realized that he wasn't cut out to work for a company. He later said that until then, he hadn't even told Cindy how serious he was about playing. Soon, he got a job as a stage manager at Raleigh Studios in Hollywood. This kept him in touch with the business while he kept going to school. Besides being a truck driver, he worked as a fisherman, a builder, and even as a tour guide in Hollywood. Those years were hard, but Cindy was there for him, and every small part they played helped them get through it. His first movie role was in Sizzle Beach, USA, which was shot between 1978 and 1979 and came out in 1981. The cheap love comedy made Costner look bad, especially the sex scenes. He later tried to buy the rights to keep the movie from being shown. The company said no, and in 1986, they put it out again to cash in on his rising fame. It turned into a pretty strange cult thing. He was even on Mystery Science Theater 3000 in 1993. When he played Jake in Lawrence Kasdan's 1985 Western Silverado, everything changed. After most of Kevin's parts were cut from The Big Chill 2 years ago, Kasdan promised him a good part, and he kept his word. Kevin played a gunfighter in Silverado who was full of life and unreliable. His energy stole the show. Even though Kevin Kline, Scott Glenn, Danny Glover, and Jeff Goldblum were in the group, the movie made $32.2 million in 1,190 screens. Even though it wasn't a huge hit, reviewers and people in the business saw Kevin's charm right away. Kevin Costner got his big break in 1987, but it almost didn't happen. He wasn't picked first for either of the parts that made him famous. At the time, Don Johnson was famous for playing Miami Vice. He was offered the lead part of Elliot Ness in The Untouchables, but he turned it down because he didn't want to be stuck playing a police officer. Additionally, director Brian De Palma wasn't sure about Costner either, until Steven Spielberg and Lawrence Kasdan talked him into giving the star a chance. It paid off to take a chance. The Untouchables made a total of $106.2 million around the world and was nominated for 4 Academy Awards. Costner became famous all of a sudden after Sean Connery won Best Supporting Actor for his part. He showed that year that he wasn't just a one-role player with no way out. He was Lieutenant Commander Tom Farrell in this Cold War movie, which starred Gene Hackman. More than 52,000 people gave the movie a 7.1 grade on IMDb and a 77 on Meta. This showed that he was good at making both crime dramas and psychological thrillers. He became one of Hollywood's most sought-after stars right away, after having 2 big studio hits in a single year. This set the stage for his power in the late 1980s. He worked on Bull Durham in 1988, which was a movie that almost never got made. Ron Shelton is a writer and director, and his script was turned down by every big studio twice. No one was willing to take a chance, not even Costner, who was really excited about the story. The movie was made in the end with a very small budget of $6 to $9 million. Everyone was shocked when it became a culture phenomenon and made over $50 million in North America. It cost 8 times as much to make that. It kept going. It was later named the best sports movie of all time by Sports Illustrated. On Bravo's list of the 100 best movies, it came in at number 55. The American Film Institute put it at number 97 on its list of 100 years, 100 laughs. The site Rotten Tomatoes even ranked it as the best sports movie out of 53. Bull Durham made it possible for Field of Dreams to come out in 1989. These three movies are known as his baseball trilogy, and his later works have only added to that reputation. Hollywood almost turned down two of the most popular baseball movies ever, which is what makes this story so interesting. People might not have seen some of the best sports movies of the time if Costner hadn't kept at it. Costner was ready to do more than just act in movies by 1990. To make Tig Productions, he teamed up with director Jim Wilson. The time wasn't a mistake. Costner wanted to be in charge of the stories he told when he was at the top of his fame. The Big Dances with Wolves was their first project. Big companies didn't want to back it, so Costner and Wilson took a huge chance. Foreign rights were sold first, and that paid for 40% of the budget before they even had a studio deal. Because of this, Orion Pictures had to bargain from a weaker position just a few weeks before filming began. Costner also got final cut rights, which meant that no one could change the movie without his permission. It was very rare for a first-time director to have that much power. Dances with Wolves was the most risky part. It cost between $15 million and $22 million to make the movie. When the budget ran out, Costner gave $3 million of his own money to keep it going. The idea was made fun of in Hollywood, where it was called Kevin's Gate, a nod to the terrible movie Heaven's Gate, which shut down United Artists in 1980. The filming took place in South Dakota and Wyoming over the course of 4 months. Long parts of the movie were spoken in Lakota and were translated by Doris Leader Charge from Sintagleska University. Studios didn't think people would be able to sit through it, and Warner Brothers even refused to release it. Costner had to put up his own money as collateral and convince backers that people would watch a Western that was almost 4 hours long and was about Native American culture. The risk paid off in the end. 12 awards were given to Dances with Wolves at the 63rd Academy Awards in 1991. It got 7, including Best Picture and Best Director for Kevin Costner. The only other person in Oscar history to win Best Director with their first movie was also the winner. Along with Cimarron, 1931, Unforgiven, 1992, and No Country for Old Men, 2007, this movie is one of only a few Westerns to win Best Picture. It also won the Golden Globe for Best Motion Picture. Later, the Library of Congress kept it because of its cultural and historical value. Soon after, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves proved that Costner's star power could stand up to even bad reviews. The movie made $390.5 million internationally on a budget of $48 to $60 million. It opened in June 1991 and took in $25.6 million its first weekend. Critics were very harsh. Roger Ebert gave it 2 stars and said it was a dark and sad take on the old story. Costner was made fun of by the Los Angeles Times for not using an English accent. They even pointed out a scene where Robin was supposed to have walked 560 miles in one afternoon, which couldn't happen. It got an A on CinemaScore because people loved it despite all of this. It was the second most successful movie of the year, coming in second only to Terminator 2, Judgment Day. People didn't think that The Bodyguard would change Hollywood as much as it did when it came out on November 25, 1992. The movie began as an old, forgotten script from the 1970s that was meant for Steve McQueen. It was one of the most popular romance thrillers of all time by the time Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston stars in it. It made over $401 million around the world. In a strange turn of events, Disney's Aladdin opened the same day as the movie. It made almost $122 million in the US and Canada alone and was in the top 10 for 10 weeks in a row. But the movie wasn't the only big deal. The world really fell in love with Whitney Houston's music. More than 45 million copies were sold all over the world. It had the most sales of any movie music ever. The album sold 831,000 copies in just 1 week in December 1992, which was the most ever for a Billboard album since electronic tracking began. It broke sales records when her song I Will Always Love You sold 2.1 million copies, with 577,000 sold in just 7 days. The album was #1 for 20 weeks, from December 1992 to May 1993. In January 1993, it sold 1.06 million copies, making it the first record to sell more than 1 million copies in a single week. As Costner was enjoying his huge success, he took a big step in his work the next year. They worked together on the 1993 movie A Perfect World. Steven Spielberg turned down the idea because he wanted to direct Jurassic Park instead. Eastwood agreed to direct instead, but he didn't want to play because he didn't want the stress of having to do both. But Costner thought it would be good to bring Eastwood back to the big screen, so he worked with screenwriter John Lee Hancock for weeks to make Eastwood's role more interesting. He didn't want to make his own part bigger. Instead, he wanted to give Eastwood a part that had a lot of emotional meaning and redemption. The risk paid off. Eastwood was interested, and the two of them worked together to make a movie that made $135 million around the world. Costner's acting was praised by critics for having a depth that many people didn't expect from him. Not only was Costner a star at the time, he was also one of the best-paid players in Hollywood. The Protector made between $20 and $30 million from the deal, which included the money he made from it. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, had given him an extra $40 million in a smart back-end deal just 2 years before. Even though Waterworld had a lot of problems during production, he still made $14 million a year by 1995. Those were the only stars who could make that much money in the early 1990s. Studios were ready to not only pay him a lot of money, but also let him make his own movies, knowing that just his name could make movies popular all over the world. There was a cost to this great achievement. Costner was known for wanting to make everything perfect and in charge of almost every part of a movie. He worked closely on the scripts, the editing, and the general idea. He said that he wouldn't let anyone make changes without telling him, because he believed that if the story wasn't given a chance to shine, then both the movie and its viewers would be let down. People around him might get tired of his attention to detail, but they were willing to put up with it because of his track record. On The Bodyguard, his desire for authenticity and emotional openness gave the movie the romantic tension that people thought it had. On the other hand, his personal life started to fall apart behind the cameras. After 16 years of marriage, Costner and his first wife, Cindy Silva, split up in 1994. The deal was an amazing $80 million, one of the biggest in Hollywood history. He was not a well-known person when they met in college. They had 3 kids together, Annie, Lily, and Joe. The split not only cost him a lot of money, but it also made him feel less stable. He said it was one of the hardest times of his life later on. When Waterworld came out in 1995, things only got worse. At the time, it was said to be the most expensive movie ever made. Its price went from $65 million to an unbelievable $175 million. Filming on the open ocean took a long time because the weather was unpredictable and tools kept breaking down. Costner and director Kevin Reynolds had a fight, and the project was known for having a lot of problems. The movie made $264 million global, but it was considered a failure because it cost so much to make. People in the business saw it as an example of Hollywood's excess, and critics made fun of it. Costner told everyone that year that it was his worst year yet. He wasn't ashamed to talk about how painful it was to lose his wife and see Waterworld fall apart. He talked about how it felt like a lot of bad things happened at once. He saw his kids half as often after the split, which he felt was a huge loss. His next relationship was short and controversial. It was with Bridget Rooney, who was from the famous Rooney family that owns the Pittsburgh Steelers. Their relationship got a lot of attention when she told everyone she was pregnant and insisted Costner was the father. Costner didn't fully recognize his son Liam for years. Until 2002, when a court-ordered DNA test proved that he was the father. He later set up a trust fund and visitation rights, but rumors about the story had been going around for months. In 1997, Costner directed, produced, and acted in the movie The Postman, which was one of the riskiest things he had ever done so far. He put a lot of his own $80 million into the project because he was sure it would be a success. Instead, it was a failure that only made $20 million around the world. It hurt even more that it didn't do as well as Titanic, and critics ripped it apart for being too long and having too much going on in the story. The shame reached its peak in 1998, when The Postman won every Razzie Award it was nominated for, including Worst Picture, Worst Actor, and Worst Director. The man who had been Hollywood's most bankable star became a joke overnight. But Costner wasn't done yet. He co-starred with Robert Duvall in the 2003 movie Open Range. While the Western was made on a small budget, it got great reviews and showed that he could still make movies with meaning. It wasn't a huge hit, but it made more than twice as much as it cost to make, and proved that Costner could get back on track after failing in the past. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, he played smaller parts in movies, which helped him slowly rebuild his image. His wide range was shown in movies like 13 Days, The Upside of Anger, The Guardian, and Mr. Brooks. Not as strong as he was in the early 1990s, he was once again showing himself as a leading man, as an important player. It was never a sure thing that Kevin Costner would win a big Emmy for Hatfields and McCoys, which made it even more impressive when it did. The History Channel miniseries was about one of the most famous family feuds in American history. The End drew 14.3 million viewers, which was a basic cable record. Even more surprising was the fact that Costner's main foe in the show was his co-star, Bill Paxton. He also had to deal with tough opponents like Benedict Cumberbatch in Sherlock and Woody Harrelson in Game Change. But it was impossible to ignore how well he played Hatfield, Ant's devil. Costner's career took a big turn when he won. It showed that after decades in movies, he could just as easily rule TV, making way for the next thing that happened. That next part came with Yellowstone. The show almost didn't happen at first. Taylor Sheridan pitched it to HBO, but they turned it down. It finally got picked up by Paramount Network, which was looking for its first big hit. No one could have known that Yellowstone would become the most-watched show on cable. It came out in 2018. Went on to become a whole series, with follow-ups in 1883 and 1923, and more on the way. The show's fame only grew, and in 2024, 21 million people watched the premiere of Season 5. Costner, who was 63 at the time, was at the heart of a cultural phenomenon, which showed that his career was far from over. Another important event happened because of his work on Yellowstone. He got the Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Television Drama in 2023. The moment was still sad, though. He was stuck in Santa Barbara because of bad weather, so he couldn't go to the event. He later wrote a touching message for his fans online and asked Regina Hall to accept the award on his behalf. It was a big deal because he was the first actor from Yellowstone to ever win a Golden Globe. It was a moment that proved the show finally got the praise it deserved from the Hollywood awards scene. His personal life was also getting a lot of attention while his work was going great. He and his wife, Christine Baumgartner, raised 3 kids together. He gave his son Hayes a name that was based on a Western character because he planned to use it in a movie. He even gave Hayes a small part in his huge project, Horizon. With multiple homes, private planes, and fancy trips, their life was as fancy as it got in Hollywood. On the inside, though, their marriage was falling apart. They got a divorce in 2023, after being together for 18 years. After that, there was a nasty fight that lasted for months and included arguments over child support, property, and even household things. Court records showed that the couple lived a lavish life, and Christine's demand for child support of almost $250,000 a month caused a fight. Costner's divorce was finalized in early 2024, but it left him with emotional scars and financial stress that affected his choices in his work. A lot of that stress came from the American story Horizon, the project he couldn't give up on out of love. To make his 4-part Western epic come to life, Costner took more risks than most artists would ever do. Many people thought he just put $20 million in, but he didn't. He put $38 million of his own money into the deal and took out a loan on his $50 million home in Santa Barbara. Disney pulled out, and he spent years looking for partners. At Cannes, he told investors that he had put everything he had into the movie. There was a huge risk involved, and the price went over $100 million. He did something brave that showed he believed in the project and was ready to take huge risks. At the same time, things were going badly in his relationships with Taylor Sheridan and Paramount. Schedule problems with Yellowstone got in the way of his work on Horizon, and by 2023, things were very tense. Costner said to Deadline that he felt betrayed and that the company had roughed him up. Sheridan replied that lawyers had made it impossible for people to talk to each other. Reports said Costner only agreed to shoot for a week, but he said the delays were due to Sheridan's slow script writing. Mistrust grew when Costner insisted on final review of scripts and got a clause in the contract that said John Dutton couldn't be killed in a dishonorable way. Because the fight was so bad for everyone, the show's longer run was cut short, and Season 5 was the last one. When Horizon, Chapter 1 finally came out in 2024, it was a terrible movie. Even with all of his hard work and risk, the movie only made $29 million around the world, which is a very small amount compared to its $100 million price. It had a big drop in its second weekend, and it had a hard time abroad. Warner Brothers even put off putting out the second part, even though it was already finished. Costner said the idea had to be a huge hit in order to stay alive, but people didn't connect with it. The 3-hour Western was criticized for not being up to date with current tastes. Costner lost so much money on it that it was one of the biggest personal financial losses in Hollywood history. Then there was the Instagram film that put an end to an era. Costner told his friends on June 21, 2024, that he would not be going back to Yellowstone. With a simple line, "I'm not going back. See you at the shows." He shut the door on John Dutton, which shocked millions of people. A few days ago, reports had hinted at a possible return, so the quick end of everything hit even harder. The statement was well thought out and emotional, and it came at the same time as Horizon to keep the attention on him. He admitted this during his divorce case, though, that it meant giving up the $12 to $15 million a season he made from the show. It was the end of the part that had defined his late career and pushed him into the risky world of making his own movies.